Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me for Regulation 101, How to Keep Your Kids and Yourself Happy at Home. My name is Kimberly Goldstein. I am the lead occupational therapist at Expressive Connections, and I am a pediatric occupational therapist with additional certifications in sensory integration and feeding disorders, as well as being a registered yoga teacher. So I'm going to pull all of that in today into our presentation, and we're going to dive right in. Let's get started. Okay, so here are the objectives for today. You can take a look over them, and as you can see, we're going to kind of delve into this background knowledge and information about sensory processing, about the things that go into regulation, so that you really have a firm understanding of how this stuff may impact your child and your family. Then we'll get into those more specific tips and tricks and strategies, but I want to emphasize the understanding piece, because once you get that, coming up with the strategies will be really a lot more individualized for your child. A few housekeeping notes. So we will have our live Q&A at the end, but feel free to submit your questions throughout. If you wiggle your mouse a little bit over the bottom of the screen, a ribbon of icons should pop up. This is for those of you on Zoom. And one of those will be Q&A. It has two speech bubbles as the icon. So feel free, type your questions in there as they come to mind. For those of you on Facebook Live, hopefully our live stream is working. Feel free to add in your comments, and we'll try to get those copied into Zoom as well. If you think of any questions later on, I'll leave our email and our contact info to reach out later too. As well, today's presentation will be recorded and available for replay. So if you miss something, you want to go back, or if you want to share it with anybody, we'll reach out with those resources. And finally, I have no affiliations to disclose. I will be sharing evidence and resources that I found helpful with families I've worked with in the past. So just keep that in mind as we go. A few other notes, just for simplicity's sake, I will be using the term child today, but I do recognize and appreciate that there are all kinds of caregivers out there. So please know that and substitute that with whatever term makes sense for your family situation. Awesome, and just one last reminder, I'm going through this, and I know I talked about my education and my background, but I want you to keep in mind that you are the expert today. I have some training and some knowledge in these areas, but not in your specific child. So keep that in mind. I'm sharing information, but I really want you to think about how this may work for your family. All right, let's dive in. So why is regulation important? Why are we all here today? You know, regulation, I like to think of it as our foundation for functioning, because if we're not in the correct emotional space, then we're not ready to think and learn and connect with others. And that goes for all of us, you know, adults or children. And so I really want us to understand that this is our foundation moving forward. And when something is out of whack, even if it's just one little thing, then that tends to throw off our whole day. Think about when you might be feeling a little bit hungry, but you want to get one last work task, whether it's an email or a presentation or something done before your lunch break, and suddenly your stomach is grumbling. That's all you can think about. It just consumes our brain power. So that's kind of the idea we're going with, that we want to be balanced so that we can attend and focus and connect. Now that I've got us all hungry thinking about lunch, let's dive right in. So we're going to talk about quarantine. This is unprecedented. This is new for everyone. And I feel like when the Safer at Home order was first issued, we had these expectations. At least I did. I was like, oh, you know, maybe this isn't so bad. I'll have time to clean the house and curl up with a good book. I'm not commuting anymore. I can get my work done and all of these other things done. And then reality hits, like it always does. And you might find that the house is still a mess. Now your space is feeling a little bit tighter, a little bit louder. Everyone's going a little bit stir crazy. And just like I said, this is the new normal. This is completely normal, and it's not something to feel guilty or upset about. This is life right now, and we're all doing the best that we can. So keep that in mind as we go through our presentation today. All right, so we know why regulation is important, but now I really want to talk about what is regulation. And it is a whole host of skills. I'm going to pop some shapes up here. And you see that we have some arrows going in. This is kind of our input and what impacts regulation, and then some arrows coming out. And this is the output, or what regulation really looks like. So we're gonna dive in here. And this is a lot. You can see this is a lot to manage. So we have expressing emotions, and this is the clearest expression of regulation. This is usually what we think about when you hear emotional regulation, self-regulation. We think about these emotions and how we share feelings, how we anticipate triggers of dysregulation, how we can identify a needed solution, some kind of strategy to get us back to a regulated state. And then once we build that regulation within ourselves, it really helps to recognize emotions in others, which is another form of regulation. You can start helping to regulate other people around you. These other two pieces, inhibiting impulses and being flexible, are lumped into executive functioning, which is a set of cognitive skills that incorporate managing routines, inhibiting impulses, self-management, problem solving, initiating tasks, going through transitions, sequencing, and planning. This is a lot here. And these are really the higher levels of human functioning, right? These are skills that are specific to humans and that really help us go throughout our day. But it's a lot to manage. And like I said, with quarantine, with safer at home, with everything going on right now, a lot of these are out of whack, right? Like our emotions are being triggered, you're in very tight spaces, our routine is thrown off, how we sequence and plan and go about our day is all thrown off. So feeling like you're not in your best space of regulation is totally normal. And we're gonna try to go through some strategies today that might work for your household. All right, so to really focus in on what is regulation, I wanna talk about what is dysregulation, because if we know what regulation doesn't look like, it kind of gives us a hint of where we want to be. And dysregulation, sometimes when I say that, one thing may pop into your head, but we're going to kind of look at a variety. So it could be this feeling of sadness or anger, but it could also be this hyperactivity, bouncing off the walls, extreme elation. Even though that's happiness, it's to an extreme, right? Or this sensory discomfort. We see this girl here looking pretty upset, covering her ears. And what all of these have in common is that they fall outside of what is called the band of optimal arousal. And what this means in therapy terms, in the therapy world, arousal is talking about the arousal state of our central nervous system. So it's how excited or how calm your body might be. And sometimes some things that aren't supposed to activate our nervous system do. And that might be different sensory experiences, different emotional experiences. And when we're out of this middle curve that has some fluctuations to it, right? That's where we get into dysregulation, which is a variety of emotions. So jumping off this idea, keep that band in your mind because we're going to come back to it. But I'm going to introduce this tool, which is a widely utilized set of tools within the therapy world called the zones of regulation. And what it helps to do is make abstract emotions more concrete by assigning a color system to them. So it really helps kids to identify different emotions in a more concrete and tangible way. So first we have the blue zone, which incorporates things like feeling sad, sick, tired, or bored. To help you, you could think about feeling blue, right? That idiom that we usually talk about with these emotions. For the green zone, that's where we're happy, calm, focused, ready. Think about green, ready to go, like a green light. Then we have the yellow zone where we're starting to feel a little frustrated, worried. It can be some of that excess energy, like feeling silly or wiggly. That means we're starting to creep up and lose a little bit of control. And then we have the red zone where we're feeling mad, terrified. We could see some aggression come out, or those really extreme emotions like that extreme elation. And this is when we're out of control, when we're in a state of dysregulation or distress. And a key part of this philosophy here is that no zone is a bad zone, and all of these may be appropriate at different times. So just like how sometimes you or I are in the blue or the red zone, that's okay. It's human nature and that's natural, and it's okay to feel our emotions. The green zone, that's kind of our sweet spot for school, right? That's where we want kids to be ready, but we know that the yellow zone is inevitable, and that's why recess is so important to our kids, because they start hitting that yellow zone, and that's a completely appropriate zone to be in during recess when we're feeling a little bit silly and we can get those wiggles out. So going back to our band, I told you we were going to come back to it. We can start to see now where our zones fall in with this band. So again, giving you another visual to really let this sink in. So it's not an accident that the band of optimal arousal is green, because this is an easy way to think of our green zone. The blue zone, we think about a low arousal state where we're feeling a little bit down. Remember, it's feeling sad, sick, tired. We're kind of in that low energy state. If we add the yellow zone in here, we could see that it's that upper limit of the green zone, or the band of optimal arousal, where we're kind of teetering on the edge. And then we have the red zone, where we're falling in that high arousal state. And it means an excess of energy that could be expressed as a number of different emotions. It could be that really high elation, that excess energy, hyperactivity, or that aggression, that anger. We're in that temper tantrum zone now. Cool, so I'm gonna bring it back to what is regulation, because there are a number of things going on here. And we've kind of touched on what it looks like and how it can express itself. And now I want us to look at the input. What's going in, what's impacting it? And we're gonna touch on routine and social emotional awareness, but as an OT with my background, I really wanna hone in on sensory processing. So we're really gonna dive into that here. So what is sensory processing? Sometimes these terms like sensory processing, regulation, they're kind of tossed around, but we don't have a clear idea or meaning for them. So I really want to break this down and define it for you. Sensory processing talks about how we receive and interpret sensory information in order to use it for a specific function. So the sensory system, sensations, talks about how we get information from our world into our body, right? Like sight, hearing, we're gonna go through all of those. But sensory processing goes one step further, because we're taking that information and our brain is now using it to make sense of it so that our bodies know what to do with that information. So I'm gonna give you an example. If you see a fork on the table, right? Seeing that fork, just the sight of it itself is the sense of vision, okay? That's sensory recognition, that's taking the information in. Sensory processing then sends that message to our brain, which recognizes, oh, this is a fork. And then it sends out information to our body to know what to do with it. So we recognize this is a fork, this is a tool that I need to grasp. So I use my tripod grasp, our fine motor skills, so that I can hold the fork. And then maybe we're connecting other images or other senses of smell and taste to recognize, oh, we're eating spaghetti, right? We see the spaghetti, so I need to twirl my fork in order to use this tool appropriately for this situation. So we're using all this information from the world around us to really make sense of what we're doing here. Okay, feel free if at any point you can't hear me, or if you have questions, drop them in the Q&A. Zoom has a little function where you can raise your hand if volume is an issue, so keep me posted on how it's going. So we're gonna dive in a little bit more into the sensory systems. We're gonna focus in on the 5 typical senses, which we should be familiar with. Oh, I'm getting a chat, let me just make sure. This video will be recorded to view later, yes. So our 5 typical senses here are sight, let me see, touch, hearing, smell, and taste. So these are the 5 typical senses that we have all heard of, we learned in school. These are how we take information in through the world. These are the things that we could see and taste and hear. But you can see that my cup isn't quite full yet, and this is on purpose. So that's because there's 2 more hidden senses that I want to bring our attention to today. One of those is the vestibular sense, and that sense is where our head is in space. And so this is a really important sense for balance, posture, and movement across different surfaces. Think about uneven surfaces, like taking a step down off of a sidewalk curb. It seems really natural to us, but that's our vestibular sense kicking in and knowing how far away is that curb, how do I have to move my body to navigate safely? And our other hidden sense is the proprioceptive system. And this sense gets activated with input into our muscles and our joints. So think about working out, activating those muscles. That's the kind of thing that we need to do to activate this system. And it's really important for body awareness, knowing where our body is in space, motor planning, how to come up with an approach to a novel motor task, and organized behavior, which has a really big impact on regulation. So, like you can see here, this is our sensory cup. Okay, this isn't an accident. This is another visual that I want you to keep in mind when we're thinking about the sensory systems. So all of these together can fill up our sensory cups. And the challenge here is that children have different sensory cups for each system and different ones than each other. And mainly what I'm talking about is the size here. So to give you a more adult-friendly example, I'm going to talk about my morning coffee. So I usually drink 1 cup of coffee in the morning. That's enough to get me activated and jumpstart my day. But I have a friend who can drink 3 cups of coffee before she even starts to notice a difference. And so that's, again, talking about that nervous system arousal level, that my threshold is a little bit lower, right? I only need a little bit of caffeine, liquid energy to get me going, whereas my friend could really use a big coffee mug. So how does this relate to regulation? Because if we think about these cups as housing our sensory information, we can see what children need for their bodies to feel okay and to feel balanced. So think about your kiddo. He or she might have a really big vestibular cup. And I like to think about those mugs that they used to drink out of on Friends that you need like 2 hands and it's almost a bowl. So he needs a lot of movement before that sensory cup is full. And until that sensory cup is full, he's going to be seeking this movement until it's full, because that's when his body is going to feel okay. On the flip side, that same child might have a teeny little espresso cup for touch or tactile input. And so this means that even the slightest little touch might overflow that cup. So even if it's an accidental, you brush by and unexpectedly touch your child's elbow, that might feel painful or scary or enough to send him or her into the yellow or red zones. And so this is where OT or occupational therapists can come in to help start to decipher, what do these sensory cups look like and how can we structure, how can we use the sensory input around us to our advantage to fill up these sensory cups or to kind of protect or maybe even start to expand those tiny little espresso cups. So I'm going to leave this here. Again, we're going to come back to it, that we want to focus on filling the sensory cup and each cup to its appropriate level, because that's where we're going to find regulation. Again, I know this is a lot. I'm throwing a lot at you. Remember, type in your questions. Feel free to write down some notes. We will continue building on it. Awesome. So we just went pretty in depth into the factors that can impact your child's individual regulation, but I want to talk about what is co-regulation. And co-regulation is looking at these aspects between 2 or more people. So it's the relationship and the responses to somebody when they're experiencing different levels of regulation or different emotions throughout their day. And it's really important for our kiddos to learn how to regulate from these positive co-regulation relationships. Because if you're regulated and you're sensitive to or attuned to their emotions, then you're able to provide emotional support and really useful modeling for them to start to recognize their own emotions and connect that, wow, I'm feeling this way, but here are some things that I could do, right? And it really builds trust between you and your child and can start developing and building upon those skills. Cool. So we're gonna jump into tips and tricks. So like I said, that was kind of our background, our info, our knowledge about this topic. Leave your questions, and then these are gonna be some more of those specific strategies. But like I warned, there's no one size fits all for regulation strategies, and that's kind of where OT comes in to figure out what could work for you and your family. But like I warned you, you're the expert, and we're keeping that lens throughout this. So try to think about what might work in your household too. So in the moment, this is when dysregulation is actively happening. What can you do? So we're gonna go through this step by step. The first thing is to get down on your child's level. What does this mean? I mean physically get down on their level. So if they're on the floor, you're on the floor. And this is part of that co-regulation and that knowledge that, wow, mom is here for me. She's like right here with me, or dad is right here with me. So we're trying to think about maintaining eye contact level. Your kiddo might not be ready to make eye contact at that point, but just you being there and facilitating that closeness can go a long way. And again, maintaining calm composure. So the tricky thing about co-regulation is that I'm asking you to stay calm when that might be the last thing on your mind, right? Maybe it's your child's third tantrum of the day because we're all stuck at home going a little stir crazy. So think about, for you, what do you need to do before that moment to really help this co-regulation? It might be taking 3 deep breaths outside the door before you even go in to address what's happening. So thinking about how do you keep yourself calm while you're trying to calm down your kiddo. Then offering assurance. Simple things like you are safe, mom is here, are really short, little verbal phrases. We want to keep things as simple as possible at this point, but can really help assure your kiddo. Then we want to find a calming environment. So thinking about this sensory processing and all of these things going into regulation, we want to try to identify, is there a source? Is there something that's causing this episode right now? And can we get a little bit further away from it? So is baby sister crying in the room next door? If so, is there a way that we can shut the door, maybe turn on some music, maybe offer some headphones, something to separate from that source if it is identifiable. Next, we want to identify and acknowledge emotions, again, making these as concrete as possible so kiddos can start to connect the dots, right? So I see that you're crying. It sounds like you're sad. Crying is something really observable. It's an action that kids can be aware is happening. And then they can start to connect, oh, when I cry, it means I'm feeling sad. And then they can start to connect, oh, if mom or dad is crying or baby sister is crying, maybe they're feeling sad too. So we're building this emotional insight and intelligence along the way. Then we're going to try to provide comfort. And this, like this warning at the bottom, says you are the expert. It's another reminder that you know best what comforts your child. So thinking about those sensory cups, if your kiddo has a little tiny espresso cup for tactile input, maybe physical touch isn't what we want to do to calm them down. But maybe offering really deep pressure and deep touch by squishing in between pillows, giving really big bear hugs, something where we don't have to have skin-to-skin contact, but gives that really deep input to the muscles and joints, that can provide comfort. Maybe it's apart from touch altogether and it's just some kind of calming noise, like a preferred song or kind of like a shh white noise. And then as we're bringing this down, we want to offer alternative strategies too. So it might be things like, I see you're biting your hand. Let's try biting your chewy tube, right? Those little rubber necklaces that a lot of our kiddos enjoy. That way you're acknowledging what their body is showing you and what their body appears to need, but we're offering a really safe way to fill that sensory cup. If we need to bite something, we want to bite something that's safe and that's permissible. All right, we're jumping in. So that's in the moment. Now I want to talk about strategies that might help in a preparatory way, an anticipatory way. They might also help in the moment too, if we're in a place where we can still kind of come back from that dysregulation. So we think about alerting strategies. These are things that are really fast, loud, and unexpected. So think about rock music, getting the body going. This is going to increase our arousal level. Calming, we're thinking about slow, linear, quiet, or familiar. This might be some nature sounds, any music you might hear in your yoga studio, maybe hugging a familiar, really preferred blanket that gives some of that comfort. And then we have organizing strategies. Now this is going to tap into that magical proprioceptive input. Remember, thinking our muscles and our joints. And in order to activate that, we have to work against resistance. So this is called heavy work. Now we're going to dive into each of these in a little bit more detail and work through the specific strategies. So we have alerting strategies. These we're looking at bringing us back up from maybe the blue zone where we're feeling a little bit low, back into that band of optimal arousal. And again, we're thinking fast, loud, and unexpected. Trying to think of things that you can do while we're at home, maybe spinning in an office chair really fast. To intensify it more, you can switch directions back and forth. Again, we're always monitoring how your kiddo's feeling, so making sure that they don't get too dizzy while you're doing this. Playing tag, that has a lot of unexpected stops and starts as well. Doing jumping jacks, fast-paced dance music, and thinking about how we can wake up all of our muscles in our joints. So a lot of these are for gross motor, but the same system works in our mouth with our jaw muscles, our oral muscles. So any crunchy, chewy, spicy snacks really help wake up the mouth too. Shaking head and arms quickly back and forth, bouncing on a yoga ball. These are all great ways to help bring us up, bring our energy level up. Now we're going to talk about calming strategies. And the idea here is that we're bringing our body and our nervous system down. So we could see this box is yellow. It's usually best for the yellow zone when kids are feeling a little bit wiggly, fidgety, bordering on that kind of dysregulation. And things that might work to help calm down is designating and going to a quiet corner of the house, playing or singing relaxing music. I really like this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown exercise. It's a way to use our senses to really focus in on what's going on around us. So however it comes off the top of your head, I usually like to do, tell me 5 things you see, tell me 4 things you hear, tell me 3 things you smell, tell me 2 things you feel, and tell me 1 thing you taste. So this is great because it can be done anywhere, and it's a really nice grounding exercise where we have to come out of our own bodies and it takes our attention to another place outside of us. Squeezing stress balls, any slow linear rocking, like going back and forth. If you have that office chair, maybe just gliding softly across the room rather than spinning. Deep breathing, looking at a sensory bottle. It's kind of like a lava lamp effect. Anything that you have where we can watch things settle kind of at the bottom. Think about like sands through an hourglass. Or deep pressure, those really big bear hugs. All right. And finally, I want to talk about organizing strategies. So again, this is kind of our magical equalizer that can help bring the body up when we're feeling a little bit low or help us to calm down. And we're always thinking about working those muscles against resistance, heavy work, working the jaw muscles against something chewy. So think about anything involving jumping. Pushing the wall is really fun, especially for the little ones who they might have mom or dad try to help them thinking it'll move. Animal walks are great, doing big bear walks, crab walks where your tummy points up to the ceiling, some snake crawls or kangaroo hops. Get really creative with it. Joint compressions are a nice way to really focus in on those joints. So it involves grabbing above and below a joint. So thinking about the elbow, you can kind of grab onto the upper arm and the lower arm, and pushing together towards the elbow really squeezes and activates that elbow joint. And this could be done through the ankle, the knee joint, the wrist, the elbow, shoulder, wherever your kiddo kind of needs it. It can be a fun routine to even go through and do the whole body. Playing with weighted stuffed animals. These can be made really easily. If you have some old stuffed animals lying around, you can kind of unstitch them in the back and replace some of the stuffing with heavy dried pantry materials, like putting dried rice or dried beans in there, stitching it back up, and then it has some weight to it. So whenever your kiddo carries it around, we're working those muscles. Rearranging the furniture or the couch cushions. Sometimes that can make a really fun crash pad to jump into. Again, OTs are kind of out there with their suggestions, but find what works for your family in your space. I completely understand if rearranging furniture is not something that you want to do. And carrying or moving items around the house, put those little ones to work, you know, within a safe amount of weight. They can start to haul in grocery bags or slide around the laundry basket when you're getting ready to clean the clothes. And activating those jaw muscles too. So eating chewy foods or drinking thick liquids like a really thick milkshake through a straw can help kind of equalize the body. So we're gonna go through these in more detail again, ask questions as they come up. And what I want to remind you here is that we're always thinking about filling the sensory cup. So it's not so easy. You notice I didn't put on the slides that blue zone equals alerting, that we need alerting strategies, or that yellow zone means we need a calming strategy, because remember, it matters how your sensory cup looks. So if you have a kiddo with that really big mug bowl for vestibular input, then he's trying to move for a reason, because that's what his body feels like it needs to do. So just because it might look like he's in the yellow zone and we try a calming strategy on him, what do you think it will look like if your kiddo is really trying to move and fill that sensory cup, and then we're like, oh, just sit here, take some deep breaths, do some stretches? He's probably gonna have a really hard time sitting there and trying to do it. Even if he's trying his hardest to attend, his sensory cup is not full yet. So it might seem a little counterintuitive, but we gotta let him move more to fill that sensory cup before we try to do any other activity. All right, so a few more things for you to try at home. Thinking about this as a routine. Start to check in with your kiddo. Start to build those emotional identification skills. And this might look like incorporating the zones of regulation language. Start to talk about the blue, yellow, red, and green zones. And this could be, I don't know, a daily check-in, whenever you feel like they need to check in, so that they can start to learn, okay, my body is feeling this way. This is the emotion that I'm feeling. So yeah, maybe I'm starting to feel a little bit wiggly. And there's tons of ways you could do this. This was just from a simple Google search that I found this. But you can have 4 different pieces of construction paper. They can put a sticker or a clothespin on the color that they're feeling at the moment. Anything that works for your family. Sorry, my throat's getting a little dry. And you can see the speech bubble over here that says, what does your body need right now? How can I help? And this is a reminder of what we want to be thinking about when we're trying to check in with kids, but recognize that not all children will be able to just answer that, right? Like, these are still abstract ideas right now, and they might not have the communication skills yet or the social emotional awareness yet to answer those. If they do, that's great. Start talking with them about it. If they don't, then we really want to pay attention to what their body is telling you, because dysregulation or any wavering from that optimal band is a form of communication. And so we want to take that as communication. So if your kiddo is throwing a tantrum and he's crashing on the floor, maybe that's telling you that his body needs to crash right now. And what can we offer him that allows his body to crash safely. Maybe set up those couch cushions as a crash pad and let him have that input that needs to fill his sensory cup. So, communication doesn't have to be just this verbal back and forth, but really start to look in at those body cues. Okay, heavy work. So again, this magical proprioceptive input, if you ask any OT, this is going to be their go-to for regulation strategies, really working those muscles and finding activities that can work in your home and with your family. Again, rearranging the furniture is great. You can also try giving a sibling or maybe some toys a ride by pulling them on a blanket, because we're pulling with that weight now. Doing activities in a weight-bearing position. Think about being on your tummy, kind of propped up on elbows, because then we're activating all of those upper extremity muscles and the core muscles and really working to resist gravity. So they could be doing a puzzle, coloring, playing, anything, but just by repositioning them, we take on a whole different sensory experience that can be really regulating and organizing. Animal walk races with the whole family. If you could get outside and do them, that's great. Making stress balls to squeeze and activate those hand and upper extremity muscles is awesome too. This is a really easy thing, pretty minimal in terms of materials. If you have a balloon and those dry pantry materials, like I mentioned earlier, like rice, beans, even Play-Doh can be stuffed inside, and then it can be something really fun to squeeze. And finally, we're going to think about adapting the environment. So a lot of these strategies have looked at what can your child do or what can you do with your child, but we also want to think about what can be done to the sensory world around them to really help that regulation too. And this might look like creating a quiet corner. These tents are great, but you don't need a tent like that. You can make a blanket fort or get really creative with the materials you have at home. Maybe having quiet hours. Some kids, or it could be quiet minutes even, hours are kind of tricky, but using a timer to signal some amount of time where we keep our voices really hushed, or maybe we talk in whispers for that time. Offering headphones or earplugs when it's too noisy, and play around with all of the sensory input. Play around with lighting, open or close the blinds, maybe use a lamp or string lights if you want it a little bit dimmer. Play classical music to slow down or rock out when it's time to get moving. We could fire up that vestibular and proprioceptive system. And maybe creating zones in your house could help everybody know where there's an area to play, where is your area to work from home. Maybe there's a snack station that kids can just go to and grab a granola bar if they're feeling hungry, so you're not getting all of those kind of questions and interruptions during your workday too. And I'm gonna keep saying it, we need to move, and it's really tricky because we're all stuck at home right now. Our activities, our space is limited, but doing whatever you can to think about filling that vestibular cup. Have a dance party, use the office chair, do a yoga workout. Yoga doesn't always have to be this very calm Zen experience. It can be something that has music or motivating characters that go along to really get your kids excited. CosmicKidsYoga.com. I don't know if it's a website actually, on YouTube, Cosmic Kids Yoga. If you go on there, she has a lot of great free videos for families that make it really fun and motivating for kids. GoNoodle.com also has a lot of movement exercises. It's used a lot in schools, but it can be adapted for the home as well. So check out whatever resources are online and get outside whenever possible. I know we're all keeping our distance now, but wherever you can, just getting some fresh air could really help. So bonus, we're getting to the end here. Make a quarantine routine. It's really tricky, and we're all getting used to this new normal, but kind of giving your kiddos, remember that was another diamond on our shape slide about what is regulation, giving them some idea of what's coming next. Just that can help them feel settled and balanced in their day. So it could be even as quick as taking 5 to 10 minutes in the morning and going through what you're going to do for that day. And maybe you start to incorporate some of these heavy work or movement activities in there. It can really help too if it's a visual schedule using pictures or even quick drawings, and just slapping that on the refrigerator or a wall somewhere in a central location. So then your kids could even get into the routine of just looking at what's coming next. And again, that's not interrupting your workday or your chores or whatever else you're working on. All right, so to wrap up, I want to remind you that OT is always here to help. Regulation is a big part of what we do. We help look at triggers and patterns of dysregulation. We help decipher what are these sensory cups, how can we fill them? And if you've ever been into an OT clinic or had an OT in your home, you know they have tons of sensory equipment and really targeted activities to provide this sensory input in a way that not only fills their cup, but can also help to expand those little espresso cups so that we can broaden the type of experiences they can have without reaching that level of dysregulation. We focus on the environment and the tasks, helping your kids to build developmental skills, using play to really motivate them. And the best part is that each OT really tries to make it an individualized experience to help your child and to focus on your family's priorities. And regulation and sensory processing is just a snapshot of what we do. But you can look at these rainbow circles here to see that we really work on any developmental task that your child is trying to master. So we look at fine motor, gross motor, visual motor, that executive functioning, adaptive behavior and self-care skills, feeding and picky eating, rest and sleep. So forming those routines, managing those activities. And the best part is that I know it's a little bit crazy and we're doing telehealth right now, but we do have the opportunity to do free 30-minute demo sessions as your intro to OT. So if you see something here that could be really helpful in your household, now is an awesome time to try to take advantage of occupational therapy. And you can chat with me about what your priorities are, what your concerns might be, and we can really see how OT could fit into your lifestyle. These are a few references that I included just to build up the evidence base. And thank you so much for joining me. So I'm going to hop onto the Q&A. And I'm just gonna leave this contact information up here. Feel free to take a snapshot, a picture of it, but this is my direct contact information. So if you think of any questions after the fact and you're like, man, I should have asked that, no worries, just reach out, let me know. If you have an interest in doing those demo sessions, also definitely let us know. And I hope to keep connecting with you. There's also our social media here, and you can head to our website. We have a new blog with tons more ideas for sensory play. So really keep connecting with us because we're so excited to go on this journey with you. So like I said, take a picture. If you don't get it, I'll send out my contact info after as well, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see your questions. All right, so I have one question here that asks how to get a child out of the red zone or any other zone to match the environment he or she is in. And this is a great question. And this came in a little bit earlier on in the presentation. So some of those strategies might have helped. But like I said, for red zone, we're really focusing on that equalizer, that proprioceptive input that is going to help de-escalate. And so, you know, when a child is deep in that red zone and it's in a situation where a red zone might not really be appropriate, he or she might not be ready to just up and go to an activity. But think about how can you activate their muscles in that moment? It might be like squeezing hands, right? So if you model squeezing hands, they might follow, or they might need your help at first to really take their hands and squeeze them, okay? Pressing on the head, pressing on the shoulders, all of these ways are really simple ways to start activating those muscles, even if they're not in a space to do it. There's a lot of great sensory toys and fidgets out there too that can help deliver this input. Maybe that's an idea for a blog post actually. I can make a list of sensory toy ideas, but if you've ever seen pop tubes, they're kind of those snake looking things that make a noise when you pull them. those are great because you have to pull, and it does take some upper extremity strength to do it. Any suction toys, like squigs that you have to pull off a wall, again, using the muscles. And those are really simple, engaging activities that can really bring kids out of that state, because it doesn't take a lot of attention or energy. It's something really simple, and it can make their body feel a lot more balanced. Hopefully that helps. Feel free to write back in if you were looking for something else. All right, let me pop over and see some more. Thanks so much for submitting your questions, by the way. Yes, reminder that this will be recorded. And I see one that says, any advice on helping with dysregulation in regards to low arousal and low muscle tone? Yes, so again, these might have been coming in before we went through those list of strategies, but again, low arousal, low muscle tone, we're kind of thinking that blue zone kind of below the curve. And so definitely go back to look at those alerting strategies, but remember, we're thinking anything loud, rapid, fast, alternating or changing directions. So if you brought a kiddo like that into the clinic to see me, OTs love their swings, right? So I'd probably pop that kid on a swing, and we might start a little bit slowly because I don't want to shock the system, but gradually I'd want to get up to the point where we're swinging somewhat fast. And, you know, we make it all play-based, so we might be going on a spaceship to the moon, or maybe on a boat to go, I don't know, somewhere to the secret island, to really wake up the body. And we're doing a lot of activities to just wake up the body. All right. And I see one that says, hi, I really like your regulatory chart. Thanks. Can you please post it so I could take a picture of it? And yes, if, like I said, my email was up there at the end. I could share it again after we go through the questions. Feel free to take pictures of my contact info. If there was a specific slide like that that you liked, I can definitely share them with you. Awesome. Okay. Those are all the questions that I see here for now. I will share my screen again and pop my contact info back up, but if you have any other questions, please feel free to post them now before we head off. Let me see. Here we go. So feel free to take that down, and we look forward to connecting with you some more. I had so much fun today, and hope that we can kind of continue this, and you can reach out, let us know if there's anything else that you're curious about, for sure. All right, I'm gonna pop that out. I don't see any more questions for now, so I hope that you all have a great day. Like I said, feel free, reach out at any time. Thanks so much.